Hey guys, so I want to welcome you guys to the first start of my brand new series. I'm starting my YouTube channel coined the 1950's Bodybuilders. So I'm going to actually go through a progression here over the next month of specific idols from that time era. I thought it'd be great to start off in the very beginning to show you where the true natural athletes first started before eventually enhancements and all the extra anabolics got introduced into the sport later on. So we're gonna first jump right into here with Vince Gironda, a really unique guy that kind of started everything, nicknamed the Iron Guru. So stay tuned here, guys. We're going to be coming up with him first. So Vince was a huge idol in the 1950s and 60s especially, and to this day he's still recognized as one of the most ahead of his time, or of the time, bodybuilders and philosophers out there. And I say that because he was known for back in the day, guys, to really have this knowledge and mindset that was way beyond science of that time. Things that we are now just coming across today are things that are now just blowing up, like the keto diet, for example. He actually basically initially followed that diet before it was even a big thing, which now in modern day 21st century era, as you well know, is a huge, explosive, popular diet amongst many people across the nation and world. To start off, I want to try to go through just a few things: his training, his nutrition and whatnot, and kind of just his overall philosophy and outlook on bodybuilding in general. So let's get started with the training. Alright guys, so the first thing about Vince's rules with training completely goes against a lot of today's bodybuilding philosophies. Number one, he was known to not have really any squat rack in his gym back in the day, simply because he thought squatting put too much emphasis on the hips and the glutes. So he completely just took out squats altogether as far as like the main compound squats, and instead replaced more of an emphasis on the legs themselves, such as through sissy squats, through hack squats, through leg extensions, hamstring curls and whatnot. He basically focused everything else on the legs and tried to take out the main movement of the squat, because he felt like having the regular movements from the squats put too much emphasis on the hips, which would throw away the symmetry from the physique. Now, of course, this is kind of debatable and whatnot, and feel free to comment and let me know what you think personally with that. But that was a huge thing of his training philosophies. He also believed in a lot of pressing movements. Instead of doing the traditional bench press, what he would really like to do is he went wide with the bar. And what he would do is he would go down and do neck pressing, basically straight to the neck, to put more emphasis on the chest. A lot of times he felt like incline pressing and inclines in general and declines were not necessary. He actually said a lot of times you can still hit the upper pecs, and just simply by changing basically the way the bar lays. So basically just pushing to the neck will build more of the upper chest without even having to touch the incline, for example. So there were a lot of different training techniques. If you go online and look them up, they were different from a lot of today's styles. In fact, he even put in his own equipment inside his gym. He actually built his own equipment, which really diversified his particular style and setup of a gym versus a lot of the other gyms when the other commercial gyms started popping up around the area. Also, what was interesting is Vince actually trained a lot of professional athletes, celebrities from California and Hollywood and whatnot, like Denzel Washington, for example, and a lot of other celebrities, simply because he was so knowledgeable about not just about his training, but about the nutrition and his overall philosophies and outlooks on the mind. And so Vince also believed in his training regimens that heavy weight was completely unnecessary. He always focused on concentration and squeeze of the muscles. So generally, even on his lower rep schemages, so to speak, like 8x8s or 10x10s, he still tried to always focus on the individual body parts to try to get the most contraction and squeeze as possible. He did not like using heavy weights in general, kind of referring back to the main point of also doing huge traditional compound squat lifts. And now here comes my favorite part, guys, of the nutrition aspect that Vince held. Now, before keto was even really a big thing in today's society, basically he trained a lot of his clients, and also he went through himself. He strongly believed in using high protein, high fat, low carb diets, to the point where a lot of those diets would get so low on carbs that it'd basically be like just about, if not a ketosis based diet, where instead of the body utilizing carbohydrates as an energy source, what he did is he lowered the carbs down so low that the body would then resort to burning fat instead. And that's the alternative for the body to utilize energy, is by using fat storage, or ketones, so to speak, versus using the higher carbohydrates. So this was a really interesting concept. He strongly believed, in fact, and which I personally believe is one of the best food combinations out there, is steak and eggs diet. Now, he went to the extreme of actually having steak and eggs for the whole day's worth of, I believe it was either 2 or 3 meals a day, consisting of just straight steak and eggs. There might have been a little bit of vegetables thrown and whatnot, and then of course a lot of liver tablets is what he strongly believed in, but I'll get to that in a second. My main point is he really believed in this diet because it was so basically filled with super rich, dense proteins, as well as really good healthy fats. So basically the steak was fairly lean, but of course then the eggs compensated for the fat. And I'm not talking about egg whites, I'm talking about whole fatty eggs with the yolks. And basically what this is it creates a really anabolic state in the body due to the high fats helping with the testosterone and boosting it. And of course with the really dense protein coming from steak, because as you well know, steak is probably one of the most, if not most, dense protein sources out there to date. It's very slow digesting with the eggs and whatnot, and it's just the body absorbs it and really hardens up. The thing was, Vince strongly believed in liver tablets simply because of the philosophy, which is similar today, to have protein about every 3 hours throughout the day to keep the body saturated with protein, so it's constantly in that positive nitrogen balance state, as he called it, to where the body's constantly feeding on protein and stuff to help grow muscle. So a lot of times what he would do is, he said eating 5-6 meals a day is not necessarily always an easy thing. So sometimes he'd only do steak and eggs 3 times a day, and then in between those breaks and whatnot, he would throw in additional sources of protein, such as liver tablets, which basically provided those additional amino acids and protein building blocks to help feed the body and to provide it with more protein besides the steak and eggs alone. So he constantly believed in throwing down, I believe it was like 12, 14, 16 liver tablets at a time throughout the day. Some big amounts. Nowadays, we have a lot of other readily available protein sources that are easy to obtain, such as protein powders or even bars and other areas, and easily digestible stuff to get right on the go. But back then, the liver tablets were the basic only real supplement available at the time for on-the-go constant protein. If this so-called low carb, or very low carb rather, what Vince would commonly suggest is to go about a week or so of very low to basically no carbs at all, and then on that 7th or 8th day basically reintroducing one high carb day to jumpstart and have the body absorb the carbohydrates that it's depleted of, and then going back in to the very low carb cycle again, and just kind of repeat. It's referred to nowadays, I know, commonly as carb backloading, where you will basically go very extremely low carbs, almost in a ketosis state, and then on, well, at least from what I've read, 9th, 10th day after, going into a carb backloading, where you have a rush of carbs going into the body because it's depleted of them. You burn through those, and then you go back through the cycle again. And basically what it did is it provided the body with that extra energy source and whatnot, and that extra glycogen in the muscle tissues, but at the same time it kept that fat loss accelerated, going back and forth with the cycle. And the last thing I wanted to mention, guys, briefly, is Vince's philosophy on enhanced enhancements, basically, anabolics and all that. So at the time, around the 1950s, 60s especially, is when they first started really getting introduced. Of course, that's when Arnold Schwarzenegger was really popping up and starting to do his thing in the mid to late 60s and whatnot. And Vince was strongly against anabolics. Now, of course, I believe he trained people like Larry Scott and stuff like that were on anabolics, but he never did it himself. He swore that people had a great potential of becoming a natural with their natural abilities. And it's true. I mean, you don't have to have the best genetics in the world, but if you train hard and you train smart, you're able to build a fantastic body. And if you look at a lot of Vince's profile pictures, his pictures from back in the day, you could tell clearly how well structured of a body he had. He wasn't huge, but he had a symmetrical body that was just praised by so many people simply because just his natural capabilities and everything that he created himself just with his raw hand, you know. And it was truly just impeccable, and just it was amazing is basically what I'm saying. I feel like there's so many great legends out there that are kind of left in the dark, especially with modern day bodybuilding. I know there's a lot, you know, with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lou Ferrigno, those are the commons, but even before their time, I feel like this is a really unique time period to share with you, especially for natural athletes, because a lot of the athletes in the 1950s were natural and they developed extraordinary physiques. So stay tuned to this series because I want to keep this consistent information going to help you guys out with your journeys, and hopefully this can kind of bring some light into your particular areas. If you like this video, be sure to leave a like, hit the like button, and if you haven't subscribed already, please do so you can stay up to date with this latest series of mine. I'm going to keep moving forward with more iconic legends from the 50s, such as Steve Reeves and Reg. So stay tuned, guys. Stay classy out there, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Cheers.